Welcome back. As the global call for climate action intensifies, Namibia is playing host to a groundbreaking gathering of regional lawmakers and green finance experts at the Namibia Parliamentary Green Investment Dialogue. And at the heart of these discussions is the push to accelerate investment in renewable energy and green industrial zones across Africa. Joining us now is Sergio Missana, Secretary General of the Climate Parliament, one of the key organizing bodies behind this event. We speak to him this evening about the role of parliamentarians in shaping a low-carbon future, the concept of green energy zones and corridors, and how this dialogue really aims to turn climate ambition into concrete action. Sergio, good evening, and thank you so much for joining us here on the Daily Roundup.
Thank
What exactly is Climate Parliament? What does it do in Africa as well as globally?
Yes, indeed. The Climate Parliament is an international network of legislators working on climate issues and on renewable energy. We are basically a network of what we call climate and environmental champions among the legislators around the world. And what we do is strongly focused on raising awareness among elected politicians about the seriousness of the climate crisis and the opportunities of the renewable energy transition. We also create networks of parliamentarians in the countries that we work, networks that are always multi-partisan, meaning with representatives from government and opposition, and also gender diverse. We have been doing a lot of work in Africa in recent years, and we have estimated that we're working with 40% women parliamentarians, whereas in Africa only 25% of parliamentarians are women. So we haven't achieved perfect parity, but that is very important for us. We also feed ideas to the parliamentarians, and when they decide to take action, we support them any way we can, but we are very, very much focused on moving from raising awareness to climate action.
Mm-hmm. Walk us through the objectives of the Namibia Parliamentary Green Investment Dialogue, Sergio, and why it's a significant moment for the region.
Absolutely. We are implementing a project called Parliamentarians for Climate Finance, and it is in the context of this project that the dialogue is taking place here in Walvis Bay. This project, Parliamentarians for Climate Finance, we are implementing in partnership with the United Nations Industrial Development Organization, UNIDO, and with support from the Green Climate Fund, the GCF. Basically, the context of this project is understanding that the climate crisis poses very, very serious threat and urgency, but at the same time, the transition to renewable energy that would be the main way of tackling this crisis also opens an enormous economic opportunity. Africa holds 70% of all solar energy resources in the world, and actually solar energy is booming right now, and it's very important to make sure that Africa participates of this revolution that is taking place. Regarding climate finance, it's very important to make the point and for to have this conversation with the parliamentarians about the fact that when it comes to renewable energy, the upfront investment is steep. After that, the fuel is cheap, so you have free electricity and energy for a long time. But the cost of capital is fundamental. And when there is perceptions of risk, that the cost of borrowing money is very steep, and that's a challenge, and that's why we are addressing climate finance in this project, whose main objective in the end is to attract investment to the participating countries. And part of this is creating a dialogue between different relevant stakeholders in a way, utilizing the convening power of the legislators to bring the relevant stakeholders around the table, including governments, including academic experts, international agencies, and private investors.
Yeah. We'll circle back to the issue of climate finance in just a bit, but part of the dialogue is also centered around green energy zones and corridors. What exactly are these, and how do they, present an economic opportunity for Africa in a warming world?
Absolutely. Green energy zones and corridors are basically green energy zones are areas that are where there's exceptionally good resources for generation of renewable energy, but also that have connectivity either in terms of electricity transmission or even port access or roads or others, and also the possibility of green industry that can be, for instance, green hydrogen. And this is something in which Namibia is taking the lead in Africa and even around the world. We will be visiting green hydrogen plants as part of this project. So the idea is to have certain zones that are very good for this and to concentrate the work there in a way that is actionable for MPs and also that doesn't entail trying to change the whole regulatory framework of any given country. This has been done before in the form of special economic zones or eco-industrial parks, basically concentrating, countries have concentrated energy and industry in certain areas, and there's certainly lessons to be learned from those experiences. In this project, we are concretely focusing on what we're calling community green energy zones, which are projects that the parliamentarians can advance in their own constituencies. So at a slightly smaller scale, basically thinking of building the new energy system from the ground up. And this could include rooftop solar, for instance, in many buildings and households, air conditioning, clean cooking, and productive uses of renewable energy, just as an example, in agriculture, where you could have irrigations through solar pumps or food processing using solar energy, and very importantly, the cold chain, keeping the cold chain to make sure that produce doesn't get wasted as it does around the world. So this idea of working with communities has the advantage of speed and scale, which are crucial for tackling the climate crisis in the sense that this could be very quickly deployed, fast deployment, but also we're aiming to come up with a standard model so we can bundle multiple small-scale projects into bigger projects that can attract investors. This is the advantage also of mobilizing political will, because parliamentarians want to deliver to their own constituents, and political will has been very difficult to mobilize for climate action in recent years. So that would be important, and also this would have a connotation in terms of mitigation of lowering emissions, but also adaptation, which is very important, including having air conditioning in rural areas or remote areas, because as the planet heats up, killer heat waves will be a big threat, and it's important to have air-conditioned spaces where the community can retreat during those heat waves. Also, clean cooking is very important, as more than 3 million people get killed every year, mostly women and children, from inhaling indoor pollution from cooking with charcoal and firewood. So again, clean cooking is very, very important for adaptation as well.
Back to your earlier point, Sergio, on mobilizing climate finance. Let's talk about what the current gaps are there in climate finance for Africa, and how legislation can help close these existing gaps.
Yes, I would say at the risk of simplifying, I would say the key challenge is the cost of capital. And so money is much more expensive in the global south than in the global north. And so and the cost of money is associated with the perception of risk. So it is important to find strategies to basically motivate private investment to come into the participating countries. Basically, the strategy is to use public funds, both domestic but also international, to take a bit of that risk and that way mobilize private investment, which in the end is the majority of the investment needed for this transition. So if there's one gap, is risk and the cost of capital. In terms of what role the parliamentarians can play, I mean, the role is so important. They are basically, first of all, they are mandated to take the most important decisions when it comes to planning the energy system of a country and climate action. And that can be done through legislation, through regulation. They have a key role to play, approving budgets and shaping budgets, oversight of government, and also raising awareness among their own constituents. And then again, one concrete action could be to have this community green energy zones be part of an institutional framework that will be conducive to them. And also we want to start with pilot projects that then can be bundled, as I was saying, to create projects that are at a scale that will be attractive to investors.
We see MPs from countries such as Kenya, Rwanda, Zambia and Zimbabwe in attendance for this dialogue. How important is regional cooperation in achieving clean energy goals and climate resilience, Sergio?
Yes, cooperation is absolutely essential. We will be having members of parliament from Botswana, Kenya, Namibia, Rwanda, Zambia, and Zimbabwe in this event. This is part of a series of national and regional events that we have organized in the context of this project. So this is one of the largest event. We had one for Western and Eastern Africa in Morocco recently, and another one for Francophone Africa, as well as some national events. But in terms of regional cooperation, mutual learning and becoming aware of what's going on in other parts of the world, not only in these countries, but doing it together is very important. It's mutually reinforcing and also builds that motivation to take action. When it comes to regional cooperation, also there's other dimension. I was talking of building this energy system from the ground up through the constituency clean energy zones. Also, this idea of green zones also includes corridors. And corridors have to do with lines of transmission that make it possible to do large-scale renewable energy, which is also very, very important. And of course, countries like Namibia have such an enormous potential in that respect. But you can't generate massive amounts of energy without having anywhere to put it, so you have to connect with the consumption centers, cities, industries, etc. And that's why corridors are important, and lines of transmission, and that can only be done through regional cooperation. The Climate Parliament actually created some years ago an initiative called Green Grids Initiative, precisely to create continental grids and even intercontinental grids that would make it possible to advance toward a world powered 100% by renewable energy. As we were developing this green energy zones concept, the COP, the Conference of the Parties, which is the United Nations climate talks, which was hosted in Azerbaijan last year, the Azeri government decided to create a pledge on green energy zones and corridors. That pledge was signed by 57 countries. It was signed by very important international organizations. That language came originally from us and UNIDO, and that's why we're talking about both. So corridors are very, very important, and it in a way it's a complementary strategy but fundamental, basically interconnectors that go covering a vast distance across borders and sometimes across continents are fundamental for the energy transition.
Yeah. Well, Sergio, we're rounding up our discussion, but what are some of the immediate actions or outcomes that you hope to see, derive from this dialogue going forward?
One, for sure, we're going to have site visits to a couple of green hydrogen plants. And as I was saying, Namibia is really taking the lead on this. And so it will be very important for parliamentarians from the other countries to see what is being done in Namibia, and also from some of the international organizations and private investors. That's going to be in and of itself quite an important outcome of this event. On the other hand, we're going to spend time on plenary sessions. We will have his actually Deputy Prime Minister and who is also the Minister of Industries, Mines and Energy, the Honorable Speaker of the National Assembly, the head of the Namibian Green Hydrogen Program, as well as the Green Climate Fund, UNIDO, private sector. So we're going to be having discussions in a plenary way around these issues that we have been talking about: climate finance, green energy zones, community green energy zones. But also we're going to be having very important national discussions where we're going to have breakout groups in which the MPs from each country will be discussing concrete action to move forward with this project. Obviously, the modus operandi of the Climate Parliament is to offer lots of ideas, put together the parliamentarians together with private sector, with experts, but in the end, it's their decision what makes sense to advance in their own countries. But certainly, regulatory environment, I mean, decisions in that respect are going to be very important, and also perhaps creating a national entity specifically for community green energy zones that can pull funds, a little bit of funds from the government, just to show commitment and give reassurance to investors, show that. But also not only a little bit of government funds, but also concessional international finance guarantees, which are a form of it's a financing mechanism that is similar to insurance. It takes some of the risk from the investment and of course private investments. So there are many things that can be done, but of course what happens in each country depends on the honorable parliamentarians. Another outcome that would be very important is that we've had excellent contacts with the Namibian Parliament, Namibian government. It's going to be very, very well represented in this event. But we would very much like to explore deepening our collaboration specifically with Namibia in the context of this project in the future.
Sergio Missana, thank you so much for your time this evening and joining us here on the Daily Roundup, and all the best with the dialogue and the rest of your itinerary.
Thank you, Nina. Thank you for having me.
When we come back after this brief break, we continue with conversations here on the Daily Roundup with Nina. Do stay with us.